Welcome back to the Show My Scars podcast. I'm your host, Derek Duker. My conversation today is with the musical artist Molly. She is a singer, songwriter, and poet from Springfield, Missouri, whose day job is a school psychologist. We talk about the common mental health challenges she sees among school children, how to establish better communication with kids through active listening and validation, how her creative outlets have helped her manage her mental health since a teenager, the outside pressure to gain fame and fortune from artistic endeavors, and more. Here's my conversation now with Molly. Thank you, Molly, for coming on and talking with us. Like we were just talking about, I find it that you have an interesting group of professions as a singer, songwriter, poet, and school psychologist. Do you find that music and poetry and psychology overlap in how they connect with people?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Absolutely. I mean, the whole reason that I kind of started doing poetry and that kind of evolved into music as I got a little older was just this whole aspect of like not knowing how to express everything that was going on in my mind. So it kind of gave me an outlet. Like, I think a lot of people who write, not everyone, but I think a lot of people who write poetry and music come from that place of like trying to express what's going on inside their heads and inside their hearts. And, you know, on the psychology side of that, psychology kind of tries to like explain what's going on, if that makes sense, what's inside people's heads. So I think there is definitely a lot of overlap there for sure.
What inspired you to become a school psychologist?
That's a good question. When I would say probably like starting in early high school, I was kind of the friend that everyone came to just for advice, you know, or like just when they had to vent about something. And that coupled with my own personal struggles that I was dealing with at the time, it kind of inspired me like, I know what it's like to need that kind of support. And I also kind of knew what it was like to give that kind of support in some way. And I liked being able to help people, even if it was just by listening and not necessarily solving the problem for them. I liked the way it felt to do that. And I could always see my friends after they, had a big vent session with me, obviously like physically, emotionally just like felt so much better and lighter. And I liked the way it felt to help people do that. And so I didn't even know school psychology was a thing. I just started out thinking, well, school counselor might be, a good place to start. And once I'd kind of dipped my feet into that, it kind of opened up this whole world into like, oh, there's a lot more going on here. And, I need to go a little bit deeper than just what I was able to provide in the role of a school counselor. So that kind of pushed me to go full school psychology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that brings up a good point. I wasn't even thinking about this, but what is the difference between a school counselor and a school psychologist?
So school counselor, I think a lot of people are more familiar with a school counselor. And, I had school counselors when I was growing up, whereas I didn't, school psychology, that was not a thing when I was in school. So school counselors are more focusing on social emotional learning with students. They might go into classrooms and do lessons or do small groups. They will help kind of with like short-term types of counseling with kiddos who maybe just need like a quick check-in with someone, or maybe just, once a week for a few weeks, they just need to come in and talk about maybe like a family member passed and they need some help dealing with that to get through the school day, that kind of stuff. They'll help connect families with resources. And what they do is very important work. And as students get older, they help with like college and career readiness and that kind of thing. So I don't want to make it sound like, school counselors are, not doing anything or whatever, because what they do is very, very important. And a lot of students need that. But there is a smaller group of students that needs some more intensive supports. And that's really where a school psychologist comes in. So they're usually doing more, like I said, intensive types of services with students. They might be evaluating students to see if they qualify for additional services. They'll be helping write behavior plans for students, that kind of thing. So that smaller group of students that like, oh, they really need a lot more intensive help than just like the general school population, that's who the school psychologists are focusing on.
Yeah, that's really cool. I wish something like that existed when I was growing up for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
What are the most common mental health challenges that you see in schools today?
That's a really good question. I worked with middle schoolers for about 5 years, and right now I'm working with younger students. And even just the difference between those two age groups is insane. But when I was working with middle school, it was a lot more anxiety, a lot more depression type symptoms. When I was working with kids who were having behavior problems, a lot of that would stem from like underlying anxiety or sometimes even like PTSD type concerns. Now that I'm working with younger students, we're seeing a lot more autism is on the rise. So a lot of students needing some extra support for the behavioral challenges that can come with that. I would say that's a big one. And, even it's kind of sad, but like even this young, like pre-K, we have kids who are dealing with like trauma that they've experienced already being so young, and like just giving them the supports they need to help process through that so that they can focus when they are in class and feel safe when they are in a classroom to learn. So I would say those are probably the biggest ones that I've dealt with.
How can parents talk to their kids around that age? Because I've got a middle schooler myself. She has seen a therapist for a while, so she has a larger vocabulary for those types of things. But how can parents talk to their kids about those types of things?
That's a great question. I think a lot of times, just starting off with being willing to listen can make a huge difference. And I don't mean listen and then kind of write it off, because even when I was younger, that was a big issue. And I found the courage, or, like, I think I'm ready to talk about this. And I did speak up, and then adults would kind of brush it off or minimize it, or be like, oh, well, you're just a kid, or like it's going to be fine. You don't really know what you're talking about. And that would immediately just like turn me off. Like, okay, now I know I can't trust this person. So I think the biggest thing is listening and like really accepting whatever it is that they're telling you when they are talking to you. That is what they're feeling. That's valid for them. They're not, it's not that they don't really know what they're saying, because they do. And I think we forget this sometimes as adults, because it's easier for an adult who's experienced more life, when you're feeling this way, to recognize like, oh, I'm feeling really anxious right now. I know it's going to pass, but what can I do right now to kind of deal with that? Whereas when you're a teenager, you are feeling these emotions sometimes for the first time. You're feeling them a lot more strongly because of hormones and a bunch of other factors. So to them, it is very real. And I think we forget sometimes what it was like to be that age. So listening and being accepting of what they're feeling. Sometimes, asking questions like, what happened that, made you start feeling this way? Or, have you done anything before that's helped you feel better when you're feeling like this? Or what are some things that you think we can try right now to help you feel better? Or even sometimes asking, do you want me to help you solve this problem, or do you just want someone to listen right now? Because sometimes it can be a little overwhelming to try to solve the problem right then, when really they just need someone to listen. And then maybe after they've had time to process, you can come back later and just kind of talk out, what are some things we can do to help solve this problem?
How do students typically open up to you, and what do you do to help build that trust?
It can take a while for a lot of students, especially ones who have gone through some stuff, to be able to open up to new people. A lot of it is just laying that groundwork of, you go in, the first few times you meet with a student, maybe you just have like regular conversations, let them kind of lead, get to know them a little bit, share a little bit about yourself, just to kind of build that trust. And I find that usually when you take the time to do that, it kind of, they tend to open up a little more naturally in their own time. Sometimes when you can tell that they're resisting a little bit, and you kind of just have to gently kind of, okay, so there is something that I want to bring up with you, or I've noticed, you seem to be struggling with this, or I've noticed that you seem to be getting really upset in class a lot, or in this specific class. Can we kind of talk about what's going on there? Or can you tell me what it's like when you're feeling that way? And just kind of giving them that opportunity to share if they're a little anxious to start that conversation, maybe starting it for them and seeing if they'll kind of open up a little bit. And again, I think a lot of it just goes back to that being willing to listen, because I find a lot of times students are surprised, especially, like the older ones will be surprised if they share like, I'm feeling really anxious about this thing. So I'll give an example. I had a student, I was working in a very, very small rural school district. And I had a student who was dealing with questions of like sexual identity and sexuality, which is very normal for, middle school age students. And she came in my room and just wanted to talk to me about it. And I think she was very surprised when she mentioned that she was dealing with some issues with her family because she was having this struggle. And they didn't really believe her, or they thought she was just making it up. And instead of, saying like, well, I think you are, like, you're too young to really be thinking about that. Or like, I think maybe you need to just not think about that. I think she was pretty taken aback when I kind of leaned into that and like, wow, that must really, like, I can't imagine my own family looking down on me or like minimizing my feelings about who I am or the thoughts about who I am. That must be really hard for you. And kind of like validating that in her, she was kind of taken aback, like, oh, like you believe me, and it's crazy to me to think like that there are people out there that are not listening to their kids are like bringing up these really heavy, important topics. And I don't know if parents are just afraid to talk about it or they don't know how to talk about it. And not just parents. I think a lot of adults who work with kids get a little like overwhelmed with like, I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, which I get, it can be scary, but just active listening and using empathy and just letting them know that you're there for them can do so much to just build that trust and let them know that you're a safe person to talk to and they can trust you.
What do you wish more parents or educators understood about children's mental health today?
I think that a lot more kids are dealing with a lot more mental health things than we realize. And in some ways, I think it can be easier to hide that with the amount of technology and social media we have going on today, because, we have kids that are talking to their friends online more rather than, they kind of tend to be in their own world more than connecting with parents. I think a big thing is making sure that you're connecting with your kids in some way, even if it's just a couple times a week, making time to just you and them, just sit down and talk or do an activity that they like to do with them to help build that relationship. I think that's a big one. And then again, I think it just goes back to like, if they say that they're feeling something or they're thinking something or they're experiencing something, believe them, take that time to talk through that with them, because if it's important enough to them that they're bringing it up to you, odds are that they're not making it up, or, there's something deeper going on there that, if you take the time to talk with them about it. And I know it's scary. And parents often have this thought of like, well, if I bring it up, then it's going to put a thought in their head about, especially when it comes to things like suicide prevention and suicide awareness, they get so afraid of like, I don't want to put that thought in their head if they're maybe worried about their kids' mental health, but they don't want to say anything. But I mean, you're not going to put that thought in their head. It's either already there or it's not, you know what I mean? So having even, just taking a few minutes to be like, hey, are you good? Are you okay? I'm worried about you. I just want to make sure that you're good. Yeah. Don't be afraid to just check in and ask the tough questions. And, you're kind of taking a risk, but I feel like it's better to take that risk and make sure that they know they're safe, or that, they can trust you, than to not take that risk and regret it later,
Going into your creative side here, talking about teenagers, I was looking through your about section on your website. And what is that? mollypoetry.com? Is that it?
Yep. mollypoetry.com. Yep.
I think it said in there that you started writing poetry and things as a teenager. Is that how you started kind of letting those emotions out? Is that your first foray into songwriting and poetry?
Absolutely. Yeah. I grew up in a household where we didn't really talk about the less happy things. At the time, I didn't realize what I was dealing with was anxiety and depression. When you're feeling those kinds of things, but you're living in a household and a family where those things kind of get swept under the rug, you feel very ostracized and kind of lost in a way. And it's easy to feel very, very hopeless. And I didn't know what to do with all of those feelings. And I had always, ever since I was really little, I had always liked writing, making up stories and that kind of thing. But I found, once I hit like 14, 15 years old, that when I was able to take all of these things that were going on up in my head and give a voice to them, and not just give a voice to them in writing, but give it some kind of structure that comes with poetry, with the rhyme and the meter, that made me feel so empowered, because it's so easy to feel like you have no control over what's going on in your brain when you're in that headspace. And being able to take it and wrestle it and slap it onto a page in some kind of organized format made me feel very empowered and like, oh, wait a second, maybe I do have some kind of control. Like maybe I can take this and make something out of it and make it make sense to me. And that was just a very cathartic experience for me as a teenager. That was a huge coping mechanism that has stayed with me even into my adult life now.
Yeah. And I was listening to your latest album, Mid Best, and listening to the lyrics and then reading some from the other albums that you've done. I can kind of hear your psychology background coming through, but maybe it was because I was looking for that. Is that what inspires your lyrics mostly, or?
I would say it definitely inspires some of it. Like I have a few songs, especially like Sad Little Midwest Kids, The World is on Fire, songs that were inspired by the interactions and experiences that I've had working with teenagers, especially. Like I had said before, these kids that, aren't taken seriously, or they don't know who to talk to about what's going on, or, the adults in their lives don't realize how much these kids are watching them or looking to them for guidance. That has really inspired some of the songs that I write. So yeah, there is definitely a lot of overlap.
Do you think creative outlets like music and poetry are underused in youth mental health care?
That's a great question. I don't want to do like a huge blanket statement, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who are using that, which is great. But I do feel like it could be used more. I think sometimes people don't take it super seriously, especially like in the school setting. The arts tend to kind of just be like considered less important than some of the other extracurriculars. But for a lot of kids, having that creative outlet of some sort, and it doesn't have to be poetry or music, it could be painting or drawing, or there's a million things. It could be scrapbooking, for heaven's sake. Anything like that could be a great creative outlet for them, and give them a mode to communicate and express some things that they maybe otherwise aren't really sure how to articulate. And I do think I would like to see schools use more of that with their kids.
Yeah, because I think like the talking and things, especially for the younger age kids who don't have the vocabulary, or it's just kind of scary for them, I think it would help open them up a little. Because it's interesting, I can't draw well whatsoever, but me and my daughter will sit at a table and we'll get like a big sheet of paper and we'll work on opposite sides and meet in the middle. And it's just funny things, but just that setting, it just kind of brings the level down of anxiety down or whatever. And inevitably we start talking about whatever it is that we drew, and then we connect it to real life, and then it gets into a larger conversation.
Yes.
It's pretty incredible. That was not the intention for why we sat down. We were just bored. And I remember doing that as a kid and how relaxing that was.
Yes.
What advice would you give to someone who feels stuck emotionally, who's never tried a creative outlet?
Ooh, I would say give it a shot. Kind of similar to what I said before, when people think creative outlet, they tend to immediately think like music or poetry or writing or something. But I mean, there's so many creative outlets that you can explore. There's like embroidery, there's woodworking, chalk drawing. I mean, heck, even if you just like go get a cheap pack of chalk from the dollar store and go out in your front patio and start drawing on the sidewalk, that can be a creative outlet. There's just so much out there that odds are you'll find something that you connect with. And giving your body the freedom to engage in that kind of activity can also help open up, your mind a little bit. So I would say just go for it. And if you try something and it doesn't really stick, or this doesn't feel quite right, try something else and see if that helps, or just create something. I mean, goodness, heaven's sake. I think a lot of times when I make things, when I write a song or write a poem or even write a short story or something like that, just having created something that like came out of my brain that I assign this meaning to, like, I don't know, it's just it's like the feeling of being a human being, like being a complex human being and being able to come up with this thing that like I made and I assign this meaning to kind of grounds me a little bit and helps me realize, it's hard to be a human being. It really is, but it's really freaking cool. And you can do all this amazing stuff. So yeah, just get out there and give it a try. There's no harm in trying.
Right. It's very low risk. And there's some sort of sense of accomplishment. Even my little stick figure drawings with my daughter I don't know. I kind of feel proud that we didn't have to rely on technology or something. But then again, this is a creative outlet for me and it does require technology, but it's for the podcast side of it. It's this deep work that I get into and like all the other thoughts, like, go away. And just because of the subject matter, I'm listening to someone else open up, a couple different times over, and it does help me feel not so alone in things like with mental health. So it's just that outlet for me and something that I can focus on. And when it's done, there's that sense of accomplishment. Yeah. And then definitely the way that it resonates with listeners at times is something that helps me for sure.
Yeah. I think I'm going to kind of piggyback on that a little bit. I think there's this push in culture now, especially with like social media, to share everything you do. Like, I think there's a lot of pressure where like, if I make something, I have to post it or I have to share it, or else it's like I didn't do it, which isn't true. So I kind of want to add on to that, like, just try it just for yourself. Like, don't feel like you need to share it with the world or that it has to be perfect, because it doesn't. It just has to be a product of your efforts and whatever's going on in your brain. That's all it has to be. The expectation is that you created it. There's nothing else there that is, there's no other ceiling there. There's no other check mark that you have to put in a box. It's simply just something that you made. And maybe it will get to a point where you're like, wow, I really like doing this. I want to share it with other people. And that's fine. You should do that. But don't feel like you have to. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
And if it goes out there and does nothing, like a few of my episodes, don't get down on yourself. Because that was something that I had to let go. That was what stopped me for so long. I remember, when I was a sports writer, I felt like there was something else that was missing. And it was because I was kind of being told what to create at times. And I felt like I was kind of being put into a corner a little bit, and there was, pushback on certain stories I had written on my own volition and things like that. And I remember thinking way back then, man, I wonder if podcasting is going to become a thing. that was about a decade ago. And I kept thinking, no, like, it's not going to, I'm not going to get numbers. And it was, now here I am, like, doing it and seeing low numbers or whatever, but I couldn't imagine not continuing right now anyway. And that's another thing is, the fear of, I'm in some podcasting Reddits and I see so many people who are talking about they're not having a good time. And there's part of it is they're focusing on how many downloads they're getting or whatever.
Yeah.
If it's not fun for you, stop. There's that fear of failure. Just because you stopped this does not mean that you failed, whatever that this is, for you.
Yeah. And like, it's so hard too, because I mean, like you just said, you were wondering if podcasting was going to be a thing. It's like everywhere now, like everybody has a podcast. It's kind of cool, but it can get you down a little bit. Cause I think any kind of media that you put out there, like even for me, for music, it's so saturated and it's hard to kind of break out with so many other people creating. And if you focus on that too much, it's so easy for it to take the joy of it away from you and the meaning of it away from you. So I think it's really important that you take, every once in a while, you just sit down and like, okay, what am I going to do that is solely for me? I'm not going to worry about what other people think, or is anyone going to like it? What do I want to do? And is this still, like you said, is this still making me happy and giving me joy? Because if it's not, why am I doing this? You know?
That's a great place to start with. Yeah, just what is fun for you and what would allow you to express yourself is the best place to start, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Even though there's a few of mine that have kind of had some decent numbers, I'd never went in expecting that. And it's just kind of the pleasant surprise afterwards. I
Yeah.
just want to help people share their story. And I enjoy that, the conversation. I enjoy meeting new people. That's what it is for me.
Yeah.
And whatever happens after that is just a cherry on top, I think.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Speaking of that a little bit, that last song on the mid best, I think it's called Everything.
Hmm.
You mentioned parts of that. I'm trying to remember the lyrics exactly. I just listened to it before we hopped on. But you talk about, I think you said something about you've had a couple brushes with fame and you didn't
Hmm.
like the way that felt and things like
Yeah.
that. What is that like, the performing, and you've done some concerts and shared your music with people live. I can't imagine doing that. A lot of people have mentioned like I should do stand up, which might come as a surprise to people listening to this series of a podcast, but uh, I've never been able to get up there. I've there's always that fear of like the reception and getting live feedback. How do you deal with that?
It was really unnerving at first, like doing open mics and stuff to put yourself out there. It's scary because you're taking a risk, and you don't know how well it's going to be received. And I would say, especially with my style of music, because it is kind of weird, and being in this, I don't want to say like we don't have a very wide variety in the music scene here in Springfield, because we do. We have a ton of different styles of music and it's amazing and there's so many talented people. But the types of artists that tend to get the most attention are typically doing like bluegrass, country, acoustic, cover songs, that kind of thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a huge market for that. People like it. That's why it's popular. But when you get on stage and it's like me and a MIDI keyboard and a electronic track, and people are like, what is this person doing? And I'm up there and I'm like rapping, and they're like, okay, so this depressed white girl is going to go up on stage and rap for us. Cool. It was really unnerving at first, but you find that there's usually at least one or two people in the crowd that will come up afterward and be like, that was amazing, or like, I can't believe like what you just said in that song like really related to me. And that's kind of like that little spark. When I found that, I was like, oh, there are people that are actually like connecting to this. And that kind of encouraged me to maybe keep performing, keep doing it, even if there was just one or two people. I mean, heck, even if nobody in the audience like was into what I was doing, it was fun for me. And it still is. I don't want to make it sound like it's not fun anymore, because it is, to get up there. And I'm a really introverted person by nature. I'm really quiet, unless you know me really well. But I don't know what it is. As soon as I get up on a stage, I can crank it out. It's like becoming a different person. And it's that in itself is an outlet for me. So it is really fun to do that. And bringing that energy every time kind of help build an audience as well. And it's scary, but again, like I said, when you have people that are coming up to you after a show and saying like, that really resonated with me, or like, I really liked this particular song that you did. It's just very reinforcing of like, heck yeah, like that's why I do this. It's an outlet for me, and also other people are connecting to it. That's great. But on the flip side of that, it's like so easy for that to become the thing that you chase, is like the validation from other people. And that's kind of, as I continued to do shows and put out music, it kind of started shifting more to that. And I hated it. I started, like we just talked about, I started noticing like, wow, this is really not fun. Like I am not enjoying this. And that's when I knew. I was like, okay, that's my sign to like stop. and take a step back because I don't want this to become a thing that I hate. This is my outlet. This is what I do for me. And I would hate for it to become this thing of like, I'm just doing this to try to get more numbers, to get more views, to get to the next show. I'm just trying to, get more people to listen, blah, blah, blah. That's not what this has ever been about for me. I don't want it to become that. And I think that in everything in that song, that's what I was trying to put out, is like, there were people that would come up to me. Usually it was like sound techs, or like, if it was like, people who are organizing events or something would come up to me afterwards and be like, wow, that was great. Hey, did you ever think about like getting a band to play with you? Or like, did you ever think about like trying this? Or, there'd be people who are like, what are you doing in Springfield? Like you should, I think people in like Seattle or Portland would really like your sound. You should go up there. And it was just like, thank you for your input, but that's not what I want to do. Like if this were something that I wanted to pursue as like a full-time career, maybe, but I really don't want to do that because, I've seen the other side of that. It's just so exhausting and it's draining for me. And I don't want that to happen. And it's taking away from my time, with my loved ones, with my friends and family. I don't want it to become that. So for me personally, there's a fine line between like, I'm really enjoying doing these shows. I'm enjoying performing. I'm enjoying doing this in Springfield, even though, it's a very kind of niche group of people that appreciate this type of music. And, the other side of, I need to get more people to listen to this music. I need to get a bigger audience. I need to perform on a bigger stage. I need to perform at such and such festival. I need to go on a tour around, areas around here, or even bigger than that. It just, every once in a while, I really just need to stop and be like, yo, why are we doing this? Because when you get to this point over here of chasing, that external validation, it's not fun anymore, and it takes all meaning out of it.
Hey there. I want to tell you about a marketing partner that actually gets weird in the best way. It's called Two Oddballs Creative. If your marketing feels like everyone else's, same fonts, same voice, same blah, these folks won't settle for that. They help brands become memorable with conversion-ready websites built to perform, brand design that actually reflects who you are, media and public relations that move the needle, Google Ads and SEO that bring meaningful traffic, and even smart AI integrations so you don't just run marketing, you leverage it. Here's the kicker. They start with a free, no-pressure proposal so you can see how your brand could play bigger without the guesswork. Go to www.twooddballs.com, that's the number 2, oddballs.com, drop in your info, and see what Be Odd, Be Seen really looks like. That's Two Oddballs Creative, where standing out is the whole game. I really, when I was listening to your album, you just said that, you got up there and rapped. I really didn't, obviously in that song, everything you do at times, but I didn't really see yourself or see you as like a rapper or anything like that. And maybe it's just because, I've listened to a lot of alternative stuff. Like what really popped in my mind was like, I kind of felt like you sounded a little bit like AWOL Nation, if you know who that is.
Oh, I do.
Because
Thank
it's a
you.
mix of different things,
Yeah.
and they are one of my favorite bands. I don't know if you've seen, but they've switched to a different genre and a totally different band name now. But the comparison that I was getting, because you do kind of have like that alternative mix of sounds type of things. But what would you say your genre is?
Ooh, I get this question a lot and I never know how to answer. Let's see.
See, that's what I thought because I was like, this is so, I love that like unique sound that you have. And yeah, I noticed on Apple Music they were listing you as alternative. I don't know if you chose that. And then
Yeah.
you said, you know, you rap in some songs. So yeah, I I couldn't pinpoint it.
Yeah, I probably would say like alternative, not really pop, but I mean like it's hard because I have some songs that sound kind of poppy, but I usually just say alternative because that's kind of the catch-all,
Yeah.
because I have like songs that sound more hip hop. I have songs that are acoustic. I have folk sounding songs. I have songs that are like ballad type songs. Like there's just so much there that people are like, what kind of music is it? And I'm just like, alternative. I guess. It's a chef salad of music. You'll find something you like in there, I promise.
Yeah, I was telling you I like several different songs off of that album, and it was because every time that the track started, I was like, "Whoa!" You know, there was something else,
Yeah,
and
thank you.
that's so fun for me. What have you learned about yourself through your music and poetry that psychology didn't really teach you, and vice versa?
That's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that question before. I think what I've learned in music is that I can push myself to process things a little farther than I thought I could. So, the song Blue Moon on Midbest is a song that I wrote about my dad. So my dad passed away 2 years ago now. And I actually started writing that song before he died. And he died very suddenly. It was very unexpected. It was a song that I started writing about my relationship with my dad before he passed, and I was having a really hard time with it just because that was something that was always really hard for me to talk about and process through. And I was hitting a lot of like roadblocks with it. But after he passed away, at first it got worse. Like I was like, okay, that song, I'm just going to scrap it. Like we're not going to go there. It actually ended up being the first song that I finished on that album. And I think it was just sitting down with my guitar and with a pad and paper and almost coming at it from like a third party perspective. Like it gave me the opportunity to kind of step back and like look at my relationship with my dad from the outside looking in. That allowed me to kind of process through what I was feeling and thinking and experiencing in a way that I didn't ever think was going to be possible. And I have been to therapists and counselors and talked through my relationship with my dad with them. And it's helpful. It's been helpful. I don't want to make it sound like, it was a waste of my time to do that because it absolutely wasn't. But I felt like writing Blue Moon specifically for some reason was just like the thing that really like helped me find that closure. And I think just that made me realize that even when it seems like I'm hitting dead ends, I'm hitting roadblocks, feel like I'm never going to figure out what it is that I need to process through about a situation, I'll eventually get there. Even if it means I have to take a little bit longer, if I have to step away from it for a little while and then come back to it. It's okay to do that. It's okay to step away from it for a little while and then come back to it later. And eventually you'll find that closure that you're looking for. I would say that's been the biggest thing music wise. On the flip side of that, the psychology piece of it has helped me understand why I'm feeling the way I do about things or like what's going on in my brain. And for some reason, that's been really helpful for me. I think it's almost like when you are sick and you don't know what's going on, like physically, and you go to the doctor and they're like, oh, yeah, you have strep throat or something. And then you're like, okay, so now I know what it is. And I can know, I need to take amoxicillin or I need to go rest for a week or something. It's kind of the same thing, but like for my brain, like, why am I feeling this way? Oh, my brain isn't taking up as much serotonin as it needs to. That's causing me to feel depressed. That makes sense. And it makes it less of a like boogeyman, if that makes sense. Like I know what it is. It's a more concrete thing now, and it just makes it like less scary and more manageable.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's how, yeah, going to therapy feels like for me, because sometimes the emotions get so strong, especially before I started working on my mental health. You really did not, or I really did not know where some of it was coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I could look at my life and be like, oh, it's probably that. And, several of the things were, but then as I started having conversations with my therapist, she was able to uncover things that had happened to me, in the past that were still possibly causing issues now. And then between that conversation, because I don't want people to feel like you go in there and they're just like pointing at you like
Right.
you're dealing with, daddy issues or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and maybe some of them are out there and I just have a good therapist, but uh, and then I'm just that type of person, I'm going to listen to what they say, and just through, meditation or whatever, I'm able to drop all the narratives and then really look at, is that causing me issues?
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely feel like it's that identifier. And then there's all kinds of different tools that you can pick from that might work for you to be that outlet. Talking about, Blue Moon and some of the other songs that were on the album, what song of yours means the most to you right now and why?
I think I'm going to have to say Everything. That song was one that I I felt very strongly about writing. And people were kind of taken aback by it because it's the most rap I've ever done in a song. It's kind of heavy. There's some profanities in it, which, I don't do a whole lot of, but there's a lot of strong emotions in that song. And it was kind of my final seal on Mid Best as an album because, I just gave birth to my first kid a few months ago. And so I finished this album while I was still pregnant. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do music stuff like that involved for a while. So I wanted to really make sure that Mid Best had a lot of meaning into it. I really wanted to put thought to each song that I put on there, and Everything was like the very last one that I was like, this sums up all of what I'm feeling about, writing music, performing music, being a content creator in some regard. And I don't know, for some reason that song just really, I think it's because it's so much of what's in my heart right now at this stage in my life that it really resonates with me. And I feel like it encapsulates, just where I'm at in my life right now. And I'm kind of at a point where I'm caring less about what other people think. And I'm coming to terms with like, it's okay to want to do music, but not want to be like really well known for it or like be famous. I don't know why, but for some reason, I feel like in our culture, they're just people are like, well, if you don't want to like go to LA and like pursue the life of stardom, then why are you doing it? Because it's fun. Like,
Mm.
I don't know. I think it's kind of sad that there's people that are like, if you're going to do it, then you got to like really do it and dedicate your whole life to it, but you don't. And that just, I think, just kind of goes back to everything we were just talking about. Or like, if it's not fun, then don't do it. Like, I'm not going to waste my life doing this if it's not fun for me. So if that means that I have to do it in a way where like maybe I'm less serious about it, but it's still fun for me, then that's how I'm going to do it. And that's okay.
Yeah, it's so hard. It is pushed on you by everything that you watch and read. It's so, there is that feeling that if I'm doing this, it has to bring me money, or it has to,
Yes.
whatever. But when I sat down and really looked at my values, what meant most to me in life, it has always been the people around me in my life. And
Mm-hmm.
this does take away from that, for better or worse. So there's this balancing act constantly when you're
Yes.
a content creator of some sort, that you have to really pay attention to what you're doing it for, and have to be mindful of, because of all the things that are kind of pushed on us, or that we see or allowed to be some sort of an influence on us. You have to really be careful about what you're letting in there, because yeah, you
Yes.
can get yeah, it kept me from doing this for so long. And ever since I moved back to the area and have been kind of struggling to find jobs or whatever as a single parent, it is yeah, there was definitely that feeling of, well, I'm doing this and it's taking up time. So I almost felt like it had to bring me money, to try to provide a better life for my kid. I just looked at that. I quickly realized just from experience, I'm like, that's going to be a lot of time if I'm trying to
Yeah.
make it do numbers on YouTube or Spotify, whatever.
Yeah.
And that was hard for me to let go at first, because you definitely feel like what everybody's telling you is that it has to make money.
Yeah.
And finally I was like, well, I have no hobbies now because but for me, it was always like, I missed that feeling of when I was writing a story, and yeah, just the chasing what that story is and getting to know the individuals that I was writing about felt so good to me. It meant so much more to me than all, the comments that we would get underneath the stories, or, the awards that I won for my writing, that those were validating in a sense, but that
Mhm.
wasn't what gave me the most pleasure. It
Yeah.
was that person that I interviewed reaching back out to me and telling me how much it meant. There's one kid that continues to share one of my stories I wrote about him from like 10 years ago, 9
Wow.
years ago, something like, and that every time I see him do that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that I have it saved on my laptop still.
Yeah.
And that was what meant most to me out of all of it. The letters that some of the kids wrote when they were graduating, some of them wrote me letters at the paper, and that meant so much to me. And some of them, their stories didn't get shared a whole ton, but they didn't care. It
Yeah.
just meant something that somebody told their story. And
Yeah.
that's why I had a little bit of a radio background. Going through college, I worked at a local radio station, a talk radio station. And so I kind of had the background in audio editing and things. And it took me realizing that I just enjoyed being a storyteller to wind up doing this.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, I didn't mean to get into all that,
No,
but
it's fine. Well, you were talking and it made me realize, like when you said you feel like you have to be making money to make like a better quality of life for your kid. But I think something that and I don't know if this is just like our culture type thing, but something that we don't always realize is finding your happiness in something elevates your quality of life and the quality of life of those around you in itself, even if it doesn't, bring about a monetary gain. You're increasing the pleasure that you're feeling from your life. You're increasing the joy that you're exuding to others, and that helps make those around you happier too. And I think we forget that sometimes. It's not always about, chasing the money. Sometimes it's just about chasing things that bring us peace, things that bring us a sense of wholeness.
yeah, my daughter has definitely been a kind of like a watchdog of sorts. It's like I'm like, what are my actions telling my daughter? I have
Yes.
been very cognizant of that of late, and it's hard because sometimes you screw up and you're like, oh no, but then but that's another thing. Even the mistakes teach them something, and it's not that you're a bad parent. It's that when you do make a mistake, especially for me, who like growing up and being a young adult, I was so hard on myself a lot for the mistakes I made, and I wouldn't let them go. I would
Hmm.
just continue to get on my own case about it.
Yeah.
And suddenly one day I woke up and I'm like, do I want my daughter doing that? And
Right.
no, I don't, because that has stolen joy from me for so
Yeah.
long. And so
Absolutely.
I have to read what I or listen to myself say things to my daughter, and hey, you're preaching this, like you better practice it as
A
well.
hundred
It is
percent. Yes.
so yeah, as a new parent, what has that been like for you as a creative?
It's been interesting. I have not had, and my daughter is very little. She is going to be 4 months old in a couple weeks. So I'm still at this stage where like she's my entire life and I don't really have time to do anything else.
Yeah.
So when I have had little pockets of time to do some kind of music or creation, I've been, this is going to sound so silly. Do you know the rockabye cover songs? Have you heard of that?
No, but I
Okay. There's this, it's called Rockabye Baby, and it's like they do lullaby covers of modern and like well-known bands. So they have like Rockabye Baby Beatles, Rockabye Baby Green Day, all that. And I love them. They're just like instrumental, little like with xylophones and that kind of thing. And, we listen to them at nighttime to help her fall asleep. And I've noticed that there are like songs that she likes when I sing, but they don't have lullaby versions of those songs. So what I've been doing in my spare time is writing lullaby versions of these songs that she likes when I sing them, but they don't have lullaby versions of them. So she's really consumed literally every aspect of my whole life. And I'm totally fine with it because it's it's very reward. Like that is not something that I would normally do, to make like a instrumental lullaby cover song of, like, right now I'm working on one of a 21 Pilots song called Oldie Station, that for some reason ever since I brought her home, that song has always calmed her down. And like every spare minute that I have, I'm like running in my little like music area, and like even if it's 5 minutes, I'm like, okay, I gotta tweak this, add this in there. Okay, what does that sound like? Okay, cool. And eventually I'm gonna get it done, and it's gonna be fantastic. But it's just so weird for me to be doing that, because I'm like, yeah, let's put a music box sound in here. Can I get a cricket? Like, just let's make it sound like nighttime. It's so weird, but it's been very rewarding in that sense as well, because this is going to sound kind of dark, but I didn't think I would make it this far. You know what I mean? Like if you had told me when I was like 19, 20 years old, like, hey, when you're in your 30s, you're going to be married and you're going to have a kid and everything's going to be, actually not terrible, I would have not believed you at all. I would have been like, no, I don't think so. I don't think you know what you're talking about. But now that I'm going to be 33 next year, and just like watching her, it's so crazy to be like, oh my gosh, like I made this entire human being, and she's incredible. Like every day she does something new, and it's hard because I see her and I'm like, I want to protect you from everything forever, and I know that I can't. And now it's like, I've gone through things in my own life that as I've gotten older. This is kind of funny because this kind of goes back to the song Oldie Station that I'm working on right now. But as I've gotten older and experienced more life, things phase me a little bit less. It's kind of, I go into a hardship of some sort in my life and I'm like, yeah, this really sucks, but I know eventually it's going to end. And I know the tools and people in my life that I have to help me get through to the end of it. And realizing that, like, now my responsibility is to teach her how to do that as she gets older, because life is going to be hard at some point, and I'm not always going to be there to hold her hand and walk her through it. And that's terrifying.
Isn't it?
It's so terrifying. But, it's just hoping that I can take all these lessons that I've learned and all of these skills that I've built up, and hoping that I can teach her how to use those too.
Being a parent is scary.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is frightening at times, but I've been really proud watching her grow up and experience different things. It's like she definitely seems like, and maybe she's not opening up at times and like really explaining what she feels sometimes, but she does seem like at times unfazable. It's really, and maybe it's because she had the tools that I didn't as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one thing that I'm super thankful for, is that
Yes.
she got started young. I did not get started. I always knew that there was something going on. I just didn't have the words for it at the
Yeah.
time. I remember journaling some really dark stuff as a teenager, but it wasn't until I was 26 maybe before I ever actually went to therapy,
Yeah.
which is crazy to say out loud. Um, but for her, having those tools at a young age, I feel like is a definite benefit.
Oh yeah.
Which I've had a couple of parents come up to me and ask, is it appropriate to, start them that young? And I'm like, I may be biased, but I would say yes.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
They kind of feel like you were talking about earlier, that you're putting thoughts in their head, or I feel like some of them have been afraid to kind of give the reins to someone else and like have an outside influence. That's kind of sad to think about, that we've lost trust in each other so much that they're afraid to let their kid talk to somebody who literally went to school for that type of thing.
Right.
Um, what a
Yeah,
crazy
I
world
know.
we live in these days. But
Right.
yeah, what
No, I
gives
get you.
what
I
gives
sorry, I was gonna share. You said you didn't start going to therapy till you were like in your 20s. I was the same way. I didn't start talking to a counselor till I was, halfway through college. And like looking back on it now, I'm like, why wasn't someone like before then being like, hey, have you ever thought about going to a counselor? And just how much of a difference would it have made if I had had that kind of intervention and support when I was younger? So I think it's amazing that you're providing your daughter with those opportunities now. That's definitely like mad props to you, gold stars all around, because that's really going to help her as she gets older for sure.
I appreciate that. And yeah, definitely, if you have a kid that's struggling, I don't know what it is. When I talk to my daughter, even though we both have that experience, there's a lot of times when I, try to get her to open up and she just says, I don't know, or, whatever. And I can definitely feel like a little bit of a pushback. The therapists seem to have a way to break that down and
Yeah.
have better tools to do that. And just, I think there's some things as a kid that you don't want to talk to your parents about
Oh
sometimes, and
yeah.
maybe it's stuff that you're doing. Even I have the best intentions. I drop the ball at times, and maybe she wants to complain about that,
Yeah. Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
So I can't recommend it enough. I definitely understand the thought of, it's scary to let them go off and and talk maybe about you or whatever. But I just, gosh, that's going to happen at some point,
Yeah.
I
Yep.
guarantee you she complains about me to her friends,
Yeah.
I know, I did that as a kid. So,
Can
um,
I piggyback on that for a
yeah,
second? So I'm really glad you said that. This is kind of going back to something we talked about way earlier, but when you were saying like as a parent, what are some things you can do to help your kid? If they approach you and bring up something that it is that you're doing, I think it's really important to be receptive to that too. And that's not just like that's also me speaking from my personal experience, like going back to my relationship with my dad. There did come a time when I felt, after going to some therapy, I felt like I was in a good place to talk to him about our relationship and the things that were bothering me about it. Um, and in true Molly form, I couldn't do it verbally because I couldn't find the right words. So I wrote him a letter and I gave it to him. And I know that he read it. He never mentioned it to me at all. Um, and so we never, it's kind of weird because it's like I know that he knew that I was, experiencing some kind of tension or that, I was being hurt by some things that he was doing or that he was not doing. But for some reason, he chose to not discuss it with me, or maybe he was afraid to discuss it with me. And because of that, we weren't ever able to find a resolution. And we just continued to have this kind of weird strain in our relationship. And I've come to terms with that. But, if there's a parent listening right now that can, take something away from this, I would hope that if that ever happens in your relationship with your child, that you would be willing to sit down and say, okay, obviously something I'm doing is hurting this relationship, and my relationship with my kid means too much to me, to not do something to fix it. Like you said, we're parents, we're still going to screw up sometimes. And I think the way that we approach those screw ups is so important to teaching our kids, not just how to deal with their own personal like failures or when they mess up, how do they need to deal with that? But also, how do they need to interact with other people that maybe they hurt, because they're going to hurt people at some point. And the way to deal with that is not to pretend that nothing ever happened or to brush it off or minimize it. It's to own up to it and talk about what can you do to make things right and kind of mend that relationship. Because, there's a lot of research out there that shows that, like, if kids have just like one, it just takes one trusting adult to have a positive impact on their life. And if that can be your parents, hell yeah, why wouldn't you want to be that one positive influence in your kid's life, because there's no guarantee that they're going to get it anywhere else.
Yeah, that's right. Locally, there was a school board campaign a while back that really like rocked me to the core, and it was like several of the candidates were like pushing for more discipline because of the way that kids' mental health had gotten to, like, around the COVID era. And that was like a ringing alarm for me. I was like, whoa, we are not understanding what's going on right now. If they think that the answer is to like install harsher discipline or.
Yeah, there's been this whole shift, I think, as society has progressed from like children should be seen and not heard to like now, it's kind of starting to regress a little bit, unfortunately. But this idea of like, oh, wait, no, children are actually complex human beings that, understand our body language. They have a lot of thoughts and emotions that need to be processed as well. And the way that we interact with them as adults impacts them more than we probably realize. And, those zero tolerance discipline policies that you're kind of talking about are usually not so great. They usually do more harm than good in the long run. But it's unfortunate because like the things that are helpful, the resources that we really need, there's not a lot of funding for it, unfortunately. And it's hard, it's just kind of like, what do we do? We have like this much, we have like a very little bit, but we need to do like so much with it. And it's hard. It's really hard. But yeah, I think, the idea of like kids just kind of need to like sit down and shut up. I hate that. Like, how are they going to learn to be functional adults in society? Like, that's just laying the groundwork for all kinds of trauma. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah, it's not helping them regulate their emotions at all.
Exactly. Yes.
Because I feel like they have it way tougher than we did. There's so much more. I'm a little bit older than you. I'm 34 already. But I just barely like had enough of a childhood without a cell phone. Like I didn't have a cell phone until I was 16 or something like that. And my parents just wouldn't buy me one. And I think there had been cell phones for a while, but yeah, they were like, what do you need that for? And I was kind of ticked off because I remember being made fun of for that. But then quickly, like, it's gotten much worse now, but I remember seeing for the first time groups of people all staring at phones instead of each other. And I was like, holy smokes.
Yeah.
And it's just gotten worse. And then social media, I didn't do MySpace. I didn't have Facebook until I was in college, and a girl made me sign up for it. But she's like, why don't you have that? I'm like, what do you need that for? And man, I wish I stuck to that more. Because it just got worse after that.
Yeah. You can't turn it off now. I think that's the big difference is like when we were younger, if you were dealing with crap at school, you'd go home and you'd have at least, a night and a morning away from it before you had to deal with it again. But, kids now with social media and the internet and everything, that's just like constant access to it in your pocket all the time. It's harder to get away from it. That's really sad. I think this kind of goes back to just what you were saying about regulating their emotions. I think we need to teach them how to regulate social media use too and internet use, which is really hard in this day and age. Like that I'm not looking forward to as a parent because I imagine it's only going to get worse by the time my kid is a teenager, it's going to be hard. But I really think it kind of goes hand in hand with like, how do we regulate our emotions? How do we regulate our social media consumption? And how do we, regulate our ability to process and sort through the things that we're seeing and reading and hearing all the time?
Yeah, she does not like, I have one of those apps that kind of sets time limits and things like that. And I've only recently implemented that because, used to, it was enough for me to say don't do it. And then now it's the definite like rebellion and, like I
Yep.
said, doing the exact opposite of what I ask. and,
Yes.
and so I was like, well, I never wanted to do this because it just felt so forceful. But I finally put one of those on there and I'm sleeping better. But yeah, she does not, it doesn't make sense to her. She's like, well, all my friends do this. And I'm like, crap, this is stuff that I said as a kid. Here it comes. Like,
Yes.
and so I think that, yeah, having that conversation with her again, I've brought it up, the things like in easier to understand terms, but like they're using social media as comparison tools
Yeah.
and just all the data out there about like teen suicide rates and social media usage and all those things. Like, I think maybe now is the time that I can, as I'm saying this out loud, start to have more honest and like, yeah, telling her like what the outcomes could be if I
Yeah.
didn't, regulate the usage of social media, because I don't let her, she has created a TikTok account. That was one thing in the background. She did that and I found it later. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, no. And I continuously uninstalled it and then I had to block it. I was like, no, we're not doing that for a while still, because
Yeah.
the statistics actually like shock me. Like, it is sad to read some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's hard, but I feel like hopefully it's worth the effort and that she doesn't hate me forever for it, which I know she won't, but it is tough to do that as a parent, because
Yeah.
especially as one that, I'm trying to be, like tiptoe along that line of being like the fun parent and one that, doesn't want her to have those struggles.
Yeah, it's tough because I mean, like, she's still learning how to regulate all that. So, like, I feel like as a parent, your job at this point is to regulate it for her until she has the tools to regulate it herself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that has to be hard of like creating that boundary of like, obviously she's your kid and you love her, but at some point you have to create that boundary and stick to it until she shows you that she's like ready to push, like take that boundary and push it a little bit further, you know?
What gives you hope about the mental health of young people today?
I'm seeing a lot more openness among younger people with talking about their mental health struggles. And that does give me a little hope. There's like less stigma around it. And I hope that trend continues. And even if it's not like, mental health issues exactly, even just like less stigma about identifying and talking about emotions and thoughts with each other and an openness around that. And, friends being more, openly like supportive and affectionate towards each other. I remember there was one instance. I was standing in a hallway when I was working in a middle school and the bell had just rung. So there were all these kids like walking all around me. And there were these two boys that had to have been like seventh or eighth grade. And they were talking about their weekend plans. And then before they like parted ways, they gave each other a hug. And one of them was like, I love you, man. And the other one was like, I love you too, bro. And I just like, it really warmed my heart because I was like, man, that would not have happened in my middle school when I was in seventh or eighth grade. You know what I mean? And I know that I hope that that's not like the exception, because I think that people need to be more like that, like don't be afraid to tell your friends that you love them. But that just made my heart feel so full because I was like, oh, that's really nice. They know they got each other's back. So just, it's like little things like that make me think like, wow, okay, so they're realizing that it's, better to talk about these things and to express your emotions. And kind of like you said earlier, they're getting the tools a lot younger. They're getting the vocabulary a lot younger. And having that vocabulary and labeling those emotions does in itself help you regulate them once you're able to give a name to it. So, all those things connected kind of do help me think like, okay, maybe there is hope for our society to progress to more, openness about mental health and understanding the importance of programs and supports for people in our society, and how like regulating your emotions just helps you be a better person and contribute to society more and feel connected with your society and your community more. And on the other side of that, like being willing to go into your community and help support other people, like just this whole sense of like community connectedness is so important that I hope that we can continue doing that and building those connections rather than tearing them down. Because unfortunately, I see a lot of adults are not contributing to that kind of connectedness. And I hope that we take a page from the book of the younger kids I see, and we learn to build each other up instead of, trying to tear those walls down.
I've heard multiple times lately that, and it was somebody talking to me about my issues and just society in general, that they think that we're staring at the problem and then that's creating more problems by like introducing mental health at younger ages, or simply going to therapy. I don't know. I don't know where they're coming up with this idea, but they think that the fact that we're more open, that we're kind of creating more victims of mental health. What do you think about that?
I would be curious about where they're getting that information, because I would say that sounds absolutely false to me. I would say, actually, on the contrary, there's a lot of research that shows, kind of like what I was saying earlier, when we do give kids the vocabulary to start labeling their emotions, I mean, that's a stepping stone for teaching them how to regulate their emotions. So when we're teaching, preschoolers and kindergartners the difference between sad and angry, or, even the nuances of like, are you frustrated? Are you mad? And teaching them how to differentiate between those types of feelings helps them build those skills to be able to identify and regulate their emotions later. There's a really good book called Permission to Feel that I highly recommend. I can't remember the name of the author right now, but I just finished reading it, and it's all about like mental health and dealing with emotions and how we deal with that in schools and with kids, and how we as adults like influence that. And I would encourage people who are maybe a little skeptical about introducing the talk of feelings and mental health at too young of an age. I would encourage them to take a look at that book, because there's a lot of good information and even tips in there for how to help support kiddos.
What's one piece of advice that you would give your younger self?
I don't want to say like keep going, because that's stupid. Like, it's important to do that, but it's like when someone says that to you, you just want to punch them in the face. You're like, no. I would say probably like just telling my younger self it's okay to not feel like you're okay right now. Like, just be accepting of whatever it is you're feeling right now. It's real, and it's okay that you're feeling that. Let yourself feel it. Process it, and when you're ready, take the steps forward to keep going. But don't just like plow through it just for the sake of like getting past it, if that makes sense. Like, it's okay to sit with it for a little bit and let yourself feel it so that you can fully process what is going on. I think that's probably what I would tell myself, is like, you're not wrong for feeling. And that seems so silly that I would have to say that, but at times it did feel like, what is wrong with me? Like, why am I feeling this way? Or even sometimes, why am I not feeling anything at all right now? But just, if I had someone that just would have been like, it's okay, like, just let yourself be right now, and eventually you'll come out on the other side of it. I think that would have been a huge help for me to hear.
For sure. As a young kid, it was really hard to understand that life is going to constantly have valleys like that.
Yeah.
And there's things that you can learn during those times. And yeah, the fact that there is a valley means that there's a hill on the other side.
Yeah.
That sounds woo woo and like wishful thinking. But I don't know, like as an adult, I've used that a lot to get through hard times. Just knowing, or using that advice myself, there's always, there's that look for the silver lining cliche, but it's sometimes not even a silver lining. It is simply that there is a lesson there. And a lot of the times, there is that, the mistake you made or whatever, but a lot of the times it's been really helpful in times where it was like, I didn't cause this, it just
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
And um, understanding that life is random at times, and
Yeah.
that sometimes you just get dealt a bad hand or a tough season to deal with. And one thing that I picked up out of a book, and I kind of hesitate, maybe not, I'm not even going to say the title because some of it was harmful information, I feel like. But there was
Mm,
this idea of that those hard times give you something to look back on and say, like, I think you may have said it earlier, is that I got through this so I can get through the next thing.
yeah.
And I think that that is something that I would tell my younger self, because there was a lot of like, not why me, but like, I guess it in the same vein of why me, but it was just like, why is this happening?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, and we kind of grew up, poor. There was way too many kids for such a small income when I was growing up. And we had to deal with a lot. And I just remember being constantly overstimulated and worried about those issues. And then as I got older, I allowed that to follow me, and it caused me to not appreciate some of the good times in life.
Yeah.
Where can people hear your music and poetry now? I know you said that you have a newborn, now that
Yeah.
you're dealing with, and so I didn't realize she was that young. So I kind of feel like I missed out on some of the live performances, possibly,
Oh,
from
no,
what you
no,
were
no,
saying.
no. Yeah, no, I'm definitely gonna keep performing. I'm just kind of like on a short break for right now while I do the mom thing. I have Instagram and Facebook. It's at Molly Poetry, where you can kind of like, I don't post a whole lot. I should preface by saying that because I just like, for me, I'd rather be like living my life and then, posting about it. But at Molly Poetry is my socials, and then mollypoetry.com is my website. I don't have any shows lined up for right now, but I will say typically I at least like to perform at like Arts Fest and Cider Days every year if I can. I didn't do that this year, but I'm hoping that I'll be kind of like back in a good groove to be able to play Arts Fest 2026. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm just on a short break right now, but I'm definitely going to be performing again in the future. It's just a matter of like when. So follow me on socials if you want to like stay updated with all that. So
Thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, I somehow had never heard of you until we connected over Reddit. And I'm glad that we did, because
yeah,
it was, yeah, listening to that album, I was like, oh my gosh, there are people locally playing music that, I really just, I guess because of my writing background, lyrics mean a lot to me.
yeah,
And yeah, listening to your album and feeling that connection to you through your lyrics and the way that you write your songs, and the surprise box of sound, I guess, was super fun. So I look forward to seeing you perform live for sure.
thank
And
you. Yeah,
yeah, thank you for coming on and sharing some of your story and your perspective. I think it's super helpful.
absolutely. Thanks for having me. This was really fun. I really enjoyed this.